best feeling network, the best feeling podcast, making sense of the world using our sense of the world. Welcome back to another episode of Pow Go On. Today is our 22nd episode. 22nd episode. Awesome. Today is June 9th. Wednesday, June 9th, 2021. Thank you, Herbie Like, for the host. How are you doing right now? Are you feeling the front of your spine? Are you feeling the weight of the body into the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all the times? That one's for you guys. And are you feeling the weight of the body delivered from the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches? And then are you feeling the front of your shins today? And are you remembering that you do not sit on thy legs? My name is Herbie, and this is the 22nd episode of Pow Go On. Today, we discuss why the feminine is associated with chaos. You know, I actually saw this topic discussed by Jordan Peterson on a YouTube video I saw, and I was able to catch some of it. I saw some of the, I saw the thumbnail, I clicked on it, I watched some of the video. I've been following him for a little while, but I thought I'd get my own take on that whole mess, on that whole business of why that might be. Have you heard that before? That the feminine is associated with the chaos? Or is that a new concept to you? Why is the feminine associated with the chaos? And how is your body doing? Is it able to feel that you do not sit on your legs? As we'll discuss this. Oh, that's very interesting. If you notice here in the back now, it actually doesn't just display just the app, but a window of the app. There you go. Shut up. Shut the front door. Right palm, right palm. So why is the feminine associated with the chaos? I don't, if you've ever heard that, you might have heard that before in media or movies. Wah, wah, whine, 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 Woo! We can't even get it to this right spot, huh? Okay, so that's what you should be feeling. And then guess what spot we should be on? It's gonna be this next slide, but yeah, so I wanted to give my take on why that is. First of all, chaos is usually seen as something like negative already, so that has been an issue that I've wanted to attack since I was a youngin. Just a little background. as we all are, lover of women, men and women loving women. They're the hope associated with the ideal, which is chaotic, which is the unreal, right? Chaotic as in the unknown, as in the variable, as in the ideal. Why are women associated with that? Well, women are tend to be associated with the inner world, right? The inner world, as we know it to be ideal, unreal, impossible yet possible. How is it possible? Well, it's happening in the inside world. Women are associated with the connection with the inner body, and both men and women have the inner body. But women tend to be associated with that, with having the stronger connection with this inside body. As such, women also tend to be better at body mapping, just naturally. That's just their domain, right? They're more gentle with it. But what do we mean by chaotic then? So we mean like versus orderly, right? We mean versus what's outside there in the outside world, physicalized. So women being associated with the chaotic. Why? Well, one, they're already focused towards the inside realm. Their body is physically more focused towards the inside realm. More inward, like a gravity, if you think about how they store and create life there, and how life goes into there. And how, I mean, in like a physical sense, like in a literal sense, the female is like, whoop, like you go in, and then the male is like the other side, right? So it's like literally one is like physically representing this idea of like the inside world. Okay, done. Just kidding. The ideal. There's this joke. There's this stereotype or some stand-up comic. It's talking about how like girls can never have a good time. You can just be watching a game and they just gotta like go in there and like ruin it, right? Where does that stereotype come from? This idea that women are associated with the chaotic, right? They cannot sit still, according to some people, right? Now, what does that mean? They can't sit still. Why? Well, their brain might be more associated with the ideal. Feeling the weight of the body down the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches at all times. And remembering that you do not sit on your legs. No, no, no. Like they can't be in one spot. Maybe because their brains are associated with the ideal world, but guess where we do not live in is the ideal world. Nobody lives in the ideal world, for the ideal world can only exist within the self, right? Literally in like the own brain. The own mentality is the only place where ideal can exist. Now, why is it not males that are associated with chaos, right? Chaos. Why is it not males? Males are the ones destroying things, right? Like males are the ones who have the physical capacity to go on a rampage, right? So why is it not males? It's mainly what they're concerned with. Males tend to be concerned with things, the physicalized realm, the physicalized world, things that are not of the body, things that are not of the self, but are of without the self, looking out at the world, right? Conquistadors, trying to get stuff that's out there, right? Trying to get, like, if you hear that popping, that's just my my left arm. As you know, as you are body mapping, your body can just do all sorts of things, really. So I invite you to go ahead and move along with me, because you know I will be moving, as your body is a mover, but also it may need to be retracing some steps which may not feel natural at first, but it needs to go through. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, as we've spoken about, but it is what it is. Anyway, you would think maybe you would think that males would be the ones associated with chaos, right? Just because they're breaking stuff in the world, or like they're the ones who are like actually committing the crimes or committing the murders or committing the actual physicalized act of things, right? You're like, oh wow, whenever things go physically chaotic, guess who's responsible? A male. So Herbie, what do you mean that males are not associated with chaos and they're the ones associated with order? Males, when they get physical, they go crazy. They kill. Statistically, when a male attacks compared to a female, when it's a when you have a violent crime on your hand, statistically males are much more likely to, first of all, for the violent crime to for the crime to ascend to a violent crime, but second of all, obviously, to actually end a life, commit to ending a life, it is severely skewed towards the male sex. Why is that? And why is it that they are not the chaotic ones then, huh? Why is it that they're not the chaotic ones? Well, order would just be the things in the world outside of the body. Even the body would be part of order, right? Now, what's chaotic? The mind. What's going on inside the body? The kinesthetic, nonlinear information that's going on inside the body. The feelings, especially, is a chaotic world. In fact, the chaotic world and feelings are almost one and the same, almost synonymous. Nonlinear information like feelings and the nonlinear nature of chaos. So as you can see, chaos and order exist both, but chaos could easily be seen as evil, but that's not necessarily true. Chaos is not evil. Order is not evil. Chaos and order just are. And chaos and order, they're just the nature of things. Order just being things in a row and lined up and practical and observable, linear, and chaos being the opposite. Non-linear, usually difficult to describe. Why is chaos not bad? Why is chaos not evil? Chaos is always seen as evil. Chaos is art. Chaos is ideal. Chaos is romance. Chaos is feelings. Chaos is feminine, right? Feminine we associate with the inner world and feelings, being very well connected with feelings and the emotional and artistic side, the creative side. We associate the feminine with creative. They are literally the most creative. You ever heard of vagina envy? It's this thing where guys get envious because, or it's this theory that guys spend their whole lives trying to create something because ultimately they actually are jealous that they cannot create the ultimate thing, which is a life. Women are naturally the more creative sex. Literally. Physicalized through structure as well as through thought and propensities in personalities. They're the more creative ones. So, is this chaos thing a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. Chaos and order are necessary of the universe. When things get too orderly, they need to add chaos to them because they get boring, or maybe they lack fluidity to deal with new situations, so you need to add chaos to it because the world is chaotic. And so it's almost like you're preparing it for the world. And then you got your chaos, and if that's too chaotic, then it becomes unwieldy and ununderstandable and destructive. It needs to be ordered so that things fall in line and so that things are manageable to continue an experience, to continue to observe the universe. The masculine associated with orderly has more to do with, and the feminine looking at the chaotic has more to do with what they're looking at, what they mostly align towards, as in the masculine will naturally align towards things and objectives and objects out there, and females, the feminine, usually will look at the observer and in here. Order being the things that are observed, so the masculine focusing on things that are observed, things in the real world, and the feminine looking at the observer inwardly, at the observer and what happens to it, what it concerns itself with. The masculine looking at the observer, or at the observed, the masculine looking at the observed, the world, and then the feminine looking at the observer, looking at the world. The feminine looking here, the feminine is like in the middle, and it's like looking over here to the observer, and then the masculine starts over here and looks outward at the observed. But they're both one and the same in the sense that one person has elements of both. You godlike thing, you absolute godlike thing, you have both, right? Masculine and feminine. Maybe not physicalized in ways that you're expecting, but naturally you have both, which is why you can understand both and empathize with both. The only reason why we're split in two is because you need two to recreate. But both are within. There's these things called mirror neurons, right? Which are neurons that exist in your brain that are most active by a large measure when you're younger, but are active throughout your whole life. And their sole purpose is to mimic actions that it sees in other human beings instantly, before you even realize it. Partly for communicating back to them, but mostly for understanding what's going on, what they're doing. You relate it to yourself first. Now, how could you understand that if you were a female and your mirror neurons were firing on a male? How would I understand that? Well, it's because you have both male and female. They're not so different. Maybe it's the fact that we share like 99% of the same genes. Maybe that's why. But yeah, the masculine being associated with orderly, not as in they're the only ones who know order, but as in they're naturally more attuned towards the observed world, as opposed to the feminine, which is associated with chaos, which is associated with the inside world, the observer's world within. So what's the women's job? What's the feminine's job? What's going on in the world right now, right? What's happening in the world is that women are being erased, first of all. And next, what's happening in the world? Well, the world's crashing Oberno, and we're drinking some tea. Going crazy right now. And I think a large reason for that is the lack of positive language used to describe and even understand the feminine experience. So if we have no positive words to describe the feminine experience, yet we have all these feminines in the world that retain the same dignity as every masculine. And they're looking for their purpose, their meaning in life. They're looking for security. They're looking for feelings of security, self confidence, most of all, in themselves. And how are we going to get there if the language about the feminine is not explored? All we know currently, what we think of the feminine is a softer masculine. It's not the case. It's not a weak masculine. They're very different. As in, the masculine is looking at the ordered world. And that's just the nature of the masculine, because you need something to look at the ordered world, the outside world, to protect the family or whatever it may be, or to get the food wherever it may be. And then you need the feminine to look at the observer, the one who is looking for, the one who's looking at the family, the one who's looking at the food, or the children. You're looking at the selves, right? You're looking at the observers and what makes them happy, as in visually, audio, food. Do they need hygiene? You know that men, when left alone, do not do any of those, do not especially focus on hygiene typically. And that's just at least a stereotype. And where do the stereotypes come from? Because there's a part of it that's true. Without the feminine, the masculine's body dies. Without the feminine, the masculine spends all day looking outwardly until its body, the thing that actually looks out, just freaking neglects itself to death. You need the feminine to make sure that the masculine, you need the feminine to make sure that the observers do not neglect themselves to death. Is that a small task? No. Does it stop at being a nurse? No. Does it stop at being a mom? No. Does every observer in the world have a self? Well, of course, because it's an observer. Every observer must be a thing to observe the world, right? You must have a body. So doesn't every body have errands and tasks to take care of itself? Doesn't have needs for its own body to continue working well and strongly towards whatever goal it has? Even other feminines, either other women, don't they have a self that needs to be taken care of? Made a good example of? Graceful, coordinated? An example of? The relationship with their self is very feminine. That is the feminine. Your relationship with the self is feminine. Going inwardly, going towards the center, going towards, starting at the skin and going towards the soul. That's the feminine. Currently, you'll see in modern day society that the feminine is just a weak masculine, or a masculine with more humility or something. We're doing everything in society right now to deteriorate our relationship with the self, to deteriorate our relationship with the female, surprisingly. You know, you hear a lot right now about how the TikTok thoughts and the OnlyFans and the porn epidemic is at large, and that, like, you'll hear that largely it's these women taking advantage of men and all that kind of stuff. I'm just not for that. I typically think that it's the men's issue pretty much for everything. The men are responsible for everything to be happening. Doesn't mean that nobody's responsible for themselves individually, but overall, the women are doing these OnlyFans and they're doing these pornos and they're doing these TikTok thoughtisms because the men have allowed it to go this far. Because the men have gotten to a point so weak where this is the ideal for them. Digitalized women and fake relationships. You think women want that? It's just the men lacking confidence, but that's no issue. We'll get it back. It's no issue. We just gotta observe it. No reason to hate it. Hating it actually makes it harder to deal with. There's nothing we can do. We are already this godly thing, right? All we gotta do is let it happen. Just observe, just now place it into the awareness and just know that that's the case. Considering that women are more, typically have a higher propensity to be more obsessed with the self because it's more aligned with their natural physicality, their structure, mentally as well as physically. And they're looking to maximize their capabilities with that. Now, what you'll notice is that you can do a lot of you can do a lot of the same similar sorts of things, men and females, despite being oriented towards different halves of the universe. Because as those two halves of the universe are halves of the universe, doesn't that mean that everything is composed of those two halves? So everything has a need that can be filled either by the masculine or the feminine. And we don't talk about that enough right now in the world right now. The use of feminine. Again, it's seen as a weaker masculine, which is a gigantic issue because when do you need that then? When do you need a job done less well? If the universe is composed of chaos and order, and there are things that must be ordered and things that must be chaoticized to bring balance, right? If the world is that way, then why is it the case that men need to lead the way on this? Well, the females are looking for their positive spin. As we just said, everything in the world can be broken down into this chaos and order. Everything. But right now we've been seeing it as everything is just chaos that needs to be ordered. And so we get someone for the job, and we're going to get a fish to ride a bicycle because things that must be ordered should be ordered well, and things that must be chaotic should be well chaotic. But if we continue to see the feminine as just a weaker masculine, then let alone all of the problems that are waiting for a feminine touch are ignored. That's already one half of the universe. And then all of the other problems that you need ordered, well, you're getting either a half oriented towards this thing job done or a full oriented thing. So if you're wanting something ordered, you can get the manly qualities to do it well because it's orderly, because that's the job that's the tool for the job. Or you can pigeonhole someone who's not oriented towards that and find yourself in a confusion. Vice versa, there are plenty of feminine problems which are currently being heavily ignored in modern society, like our connection with the self, our care for the self. We have mental health epidemic. We have porn epidemic, porn addiction epidemic. We have the opioid epidemic. We have the mass hysteria and fear brought about by the lack of trust in the media and the politics right now. What is that? Trust in the self, right? That trust in the ability to know the world and the ability to be calm in the world. The world is having a hard time being calm. What is that? A lack of feminine, a lack of connection with the self again. A side effect of viewing the feminine as a lower masculine instead of a completely different role that complements itself completely. Do you replace an inhale with an exhale? No. Do you replace an exhale with an inhale? No. They both have their purpose, but they both function towards the same cause. Male and female, baby. Do you place your weight of the body down the front of the spine into the rainbow arches? And then leave the back portion of the spine free to shield the nerves and play its separate role from the front of the spine, right? So as we're adding language, or shouldn't we add language to the positive spins of feminines? You hear a lot of like, oh, all of the negative words are like feminine, the B word, the C word. First of all, it's not even true. You can call some of the D word, and that's used all the time. And second of all, yeah, it's because we don't have a very clear idea of what the positive of the feminine is. without having the connection to the self, it makes a lot of sense that we didn't have very much vocabulary to begin describing this experience to other people, to even discover that it's even a thing. So why would we think that it's masculine, feminine? Makes sense. But there it be, seemingly looking at the same things, because I mean, we can't look underneath our eyeballs. We can't look at our brain like SpongeBob. We can only look at the world, right? So similarly, we're going to be looking like we're looking at similar things, because we all have to look at the world the same way using our senses. But what's in our awareness turns out to be very different things. What's in our awareness for the males tends to be the outside world, the other, and the feminine tends to look at the inside world, the self. Using the outside world to do it, mirrors, jewelry, makeup. I mean, just overall self-care. Self-care is a feminine thing, whereas doing to the world is a masculine thing. You know what I mean? So how does this relate to so many things? Well, why is it good that women can be hygienic and that they can and that they can spend years and hone their micro motor skills and artistic skills, creative skills at performing self-care on their own body, their face for makeup, whatever have you. What is that for? To look good? Yeah, it looks great, but what does that imply? It implies that they are skilled at caring about the self. Whether that be grooming, whether that be emotional support, security, whether that be food, cooking, all things we commonly associate with the woman, all things we used to think as weaker masculine things, turned out to be completely independent activities with their own affinity for highly skilled people to invest in and to reap generous amounts of rewards for investing in. Look, you hone your motor skills as a woman to become very good at doing makeup or cleaning or removing crazy stuff from kids' bodies or other people's bodies. You become a gigantic asset to people. People don't know how to handle for the self. People don't know how to care for the self, because we've lost this connection with the self, first of all. So people don't know how to handle the self. It's very valuable. So we can see kind of an outline, or we see a pattern being described in modern day society, where we can see more and more women trying to take men roles, and that doesn't even set off any alarms, because it makes sense. It's like, if we as a society as well, because what are we learning from other than society, right? If we as a society are not verbally clear on what exactly the benefits of the feminine are, then all we're doing is only seeing positives in the masculine. So if you are a human being, which I think you are as you're listening to this, so if you're a human being, you're looking for how to find purpose in life, how to satisfy yourself, how to find that thing that drives you, that makes life worth it. So if the world right now, as we're describing it, can only describe positive things in a masculine sense, Well, anybody wanting to make anything positive out of themselves are going to try to go for that masculine thing. But not everybody's masculine, and that's totally cool. So, what's the issue? Well, we couldn't even describe what the difference as masculine and feminine was. Maybe that's the issue. Yes, indeed. Either looking outward at the world or looking inward at the self. Masculine and feminine. Is that new information to you? What does that mean? Looking outward at the world is masculine. Looking inward at the self is feminine. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the idea of the outside world being categorized as orderly, as in like the trees, other people, even the body, the flesh, anything physicalized? How do you feel about that being considered orderly? And then ideas and the nonlinear, the abstracts, being considered chaos. How do you feel about those definitions? Do they ring true? Do they ring true for you? Don't they need each other? How can you have chaos without order? How could you know chaos without order? People like to say it's a religious thing, or they like to think of the chaos order stuff as a science that is almost amongst the ranks of religion. Maybe that might be the case, because it might put religion up where it belongs for the human experience. Every experience is a religious experience. We just decide what our religion is, though, and then align it thusly. What I mean by chaos and order feeling like of the religious rank is that they are very almighty. Order and chaos. Simply two aspects of the world that are observed and just are, because otherwise they wouldn't be observable. You take the simplest, you simplify the universe, blah, 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 simplify as much as you can. What you get is order and chaos. It's the smallest amount of discernible unit, right? You chunk up the world in order of chaos, and you have simply two observable sides, the chaos and the order. The practical versus the unreal. The potential versus the actuated. Potential being chaotic, right? Potential being idealized. Romantic potential, right? All things that are possible versus the actualized versus the potentiated. What actually came to be. And what's so funny about the orderly world, the outside world, is that things are discrete and unique. As in, I'm Herbie, and there is nothing else that is occupying this space right now where I'm at. Whereas, in the inside world, in the idealized, the chaotic, there can be 5,000 people where I'm at right now. It's all the same. It's all the same. Both are true parts of our nature, right? Because, to put it another way, order would be the known and chaos is the unknown. As you walk towards a hill and there's like a sun thing, or the sun's rising, the sun thing, you're a god thing, right? As you see the sun coming up over a hill, you're aware of it for whatever reason. Maybe it's that time of the day. Maybe you're beginning to see light, but not the sun itself. Until the sun shows itself, it is in the unknown world to you, right? It is behind that hill. Whereas when the sun finally shows itself, it becomes now part of the known world. This is a Taoist. This is a belief. This is a path of thinking introduced by Taoism. Way back in the day, we're talking thousands of years. And what they did was chunk up the universe into the most simplest concept, which is a pole. Polarities. Two polarities on one pole, north and a south. Two aspects of the same event, but one is the north and one is the south. One is the known, one is the unknown. As in, when any event occurs, what is coming beforehand is all this unknown of, okay, what might happen. And then the known is what materializes in space, what happens in reality. The important thing here is that what I'm mentioning it for is that they're both aspects of the same event. The one thing that happened in your awareness, in your observation, because of the nature of the orderly world and that things can only exist when something else doesn't exist there, like me, I can only exist in this spot because something else isn't taking this spot too. They're two aspects of the same event in the sense that when something materializes in the physical world, that act and that event in that world means that other things did not happen. So that thing is the orderly, and then everything that it is not gets thrown into the unorderly bag, the chaotic bag. You see how that's just kind of just the nature of things. It's not really even like you have to look for it. It's like a mathematical thing. Because it is so, all of these other things are not so. All we're doing is placing them into categories now. We're saying that, okay, these are things that are so, and then there's another categories for things that are not so. The things of the world versus the things that could have been. So they're two aspects of the same event, right? Like, meaning when one exists, it creates the events of the other ones. When you place a ball in the room, it creates the idea that there is nothing else on that spot. The ball is in the middle of the room. Tell me 10 things that are not the ball that is sitting right there in the room, and you can give me infinity things. Every time you create a new thing, it just creates a whole new host of new connections to ideas of new things that are not. And what is that? Maybe the key to creativity. What is this thing right now? What is it not? What could it be? You wouldn't know what it could be unless you know what it is, right? It's kind of like that. They create each other. So you have all these things that it is not, right? So when you reduce those, you see what it is. Then when you see what it is, you have this new category of things to look at, which are things that it is not. And those are the things that are in the mental inside world, this chaotic world of ours. Two aspects of the same. Two aspects of the same human, male and female. There might be something towards a soulmate because of this nature, because of this order and chaos thing, as opposed to the whole. We got a question the other day that was like, do you think polygamy should be legalized? I said it depends. But overall, I think the nature of humans is, and why do we discuss nature, right? Not necessarily just to discuss where they start, but where they want to go also. Like what it feels that they are, what it seems that they are ordered to do or designed to do. It appears that they're designed, it appears that they're designed to be monogamous simply because does order have many chaoses? No, it's just order and chaos. There's not multiple types. Chaos is an order. Chaos has the opposite, which is order, and order has the opposite, which is chaos. It's not like one order and then 5 chaoses, or one chaos and 20 orders. You know what I mean? It's not even granularized like that. It's gigantic umbrella concepts of order and chaos. The outside world versus the inside world. It might be a problem of too many chefs in the kitchen. Should we try to distract ourselves from anything but that? What good descriptions? Tell me what good descriptions we have of the feminine. I'll wait. It's usually stuff like meek, be quiet, don't eat a lot, don't be stinky, don't be sweaty. It's just all these don'ts, right? Just like don't be a man is basically the message. I'm not even about all this like women empowerment and all this kind of crap, but I can like see right through it that we need better descriptions. It's like I think in a way, I think it's like men are supposed to be like creating the languages, but because men have gotten so insecure in the last 60 to 150 years that they haven't, even though they love describing women in a way that'll build them up is something that's lacking in the male community. Just due to a self-confidence issue. If I build them up too much, won't they leave me? All these kinds of things. But there's a large hurt happening right now. A lot of people could benefit from hearing those things, from how to describe themselves differently in a more positive way. You don't even need to bend the truth. You don't even need to do nothing. Just be aware now. Just throw it into your awareness if it feels right for you. You know, in one ear, out the other, right, guys? You godly being. Your godly thing inside you is going to decide anyway. But what are some compliments? What are some benefits or some good words to describe the feminine in today's society? I think we'll find that there aren't too many because most of them are just not men. Just don't be a man. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of what the concept of masculine and feminine is. Thinking that feminine is just a weaker male. You could see how it's like that. It's the most natural conclusion to draw, especially if you are eliminating the feeling of the self, the acknowledgement of the self, because then you're taking out the entire, maybe where the entire solution is, maybe where the answer to the problem is, the self. So you got these women where you're like, oh, she's so quiet. That's a good thing. And the women are like, hey, how come I can't be loud? And then everyone's like, I can't answer that. Sorry. Wow, way to kill their dignity. That's going to give them confidence. No, being quiet. Well, first of all, among other things, being quiet is good for everybody. Learning how to be quiet is a good skill for anybody to learn. Learning how to be quiet is a good skill for anyone to learn. You learn a lot more when you're listening. And you want to learn a lot more than you currently know. But beyond that, what does it take? Discipline of the self. Still takes discipline of the self. Oh, makeup. You're just doing makeup. Really? Looks like art. Motor skills. Hand-eye coordination. Patience. Attention to detail. Overall, just attention to self. To know what it takes to... Attention to the self, to know what it takes to make the self look good. And that's so valuable. How long are you going to be hunter-gathering, should your body crap out and die on you? Well, if you're focusing all your time on hunting and gathering, getting great at being a good hunter-gatherer, how long do you spend looking at your car? How long do you spend looking at yourself, the vehicle that you're in? How long do you spend looking at your vehicle you're in? And how long has it been since you've addressed the indicator light? How long has it been since you've showered? How long has it been since you've gotten a haircut? How long has it been since you've dealt with yourself? Because we all have to deal with ourselves, right? Even as the dudes, we're going to be ignoring it, but there is a calling to deal with ourselves, right? As our room gets messier, as our body gets dirtier and dirtier, we're running away from it all the time as we feel called to a purpose to provide. But we're running from the self all the time. Without the women, we might as well crap out and put out after like 22 years, if you're lucky. You need the mother who provides what? As they're focused on the self and they're attuned to the chaotic, as babies are chaotic, it works out really well. As they're very highly attuned and highly in tune with the feelings domain, tends to be very good for kids. This chaos thing, not such a bad thing. Creative, the ideal world, the romanticized world, the world where they give the kids dreams. The way the face structure looks for a woman is just different on all accounts, but also just sheerly from the fact that they attune themselves to looking at the chaotic, the romantic, the idealized world, creates a different expression on their face, which creates a different sense of dreams and hope within your kids. Something that a male can't even replicate if they tried. This chaotic world is so necessary. Giving everybody hope. That things could be better. What is that could be? Hope. Where does that come from? Women. The inside monologue, the connection with the self and the inside self, that godly thing, right? The connection with that godly thing that knows that it'll be better, that times will get better. So it's that hope. Now, where does that hope spring from? From care for the self. To know that the self can endure. The body can endure. The self can endure. How does the self endure? With self-care. Who is most well equipped for that? Feminine. Because just like everything, there is a way to do it. There is a technique that is better than others. There is a way to fix your car that is more efficient, that is less likely to cause more damage. There's a way to everything. There is a way to dance with less prone to injury. There is a way to even use your keyboard in a way that will make you less prone to injury, right? In the same way, there's a way to care for the self. And men, being very prideful and also unskillful at the self, chose to ignore the self for so long. Now, who's going to make the language so that we can increase our understanding and our proficiency of caring for the self? Well, I mean, women are caring about the self, not making languages, right? So that's a big issue. The masculines also just don't know how to describe it. They get nervous, and trying to get that pony tangs. Or whatever it might be. Or whatever. They might just feel insecure for whatever reason. But without the care of self, there is no self to observe the world. And due to our lack of ability to describe exactly what the benefit of this feminine was, what we're seeing is all of the great feminines and all of everybody running gung-ho to the masculine side, the orderly side, the outside world side. Obsessed with the outside world. Obsessed with the things that we can see in the world. So we've completely neglected this connection with the self. You'll see a huge in if not already, a huge influx of meditation and soulful kind of Instagram socials, all focused on trying to solve the same problem. We've lost this connection to the self, the feminine. What's funny is you'll see a lot of these soul and feminine kind of spiritual Instagrams, and they're still focused on the self, but they're trying to reach the self through outside means of the outside world. What's that all about? And what do I mean by that? By saying, well, you should do this, do that. You should do 3 nice things for yourself. You should say 5 good things to your friend today. You should eat a healthy meal today. Very outside world looking things. As in, you're still looking at other things that are not the self to improve the self. Instead of looking at the self and saying, how do I feel at this moment? Was I less courageous in this moment than the last? Did my laziness overcome myself? A lot of it is focused on self-care. So a lot of the idea around femininity is there still embedded just in the language itself, because it's all about the self. It's all about the self-care. But imagine the power that comes from being convicted in knowing that the masculine and feminine are split up by order and chaos. Just not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that the chaos, it doesn't mean that the females can never experience order, or that the men cannot experience chaos or whatever. They're experiencing it all the time. But rather, they mostly concern with themselves with the orderly, and the females naturally concern themselves with the chaotic, the unreal, the idealized, the romantic, the what could be. Whereas the men typically orient towards what is. Can both orientations fix the same problems to the same capacity? No. That's why we need both of them. Are most of the problems in the world solved best by orderly people? No. It's probably about half and half, because everything has chaos and order. How should we make a policy? Well, using outward logic, because we're trying to affect many people. How do we breathe without you? I want to know. How do we enable an entire country to reunite? This actually seems like a feminine, if it's a spiritual thing, in order for people to reunite under a common idea. It might be a feminine problem. It might be a problem which is best solved with feminine solutions. But everything has orderly and feminine, right? It's not so much that this problem has chaotic solution, or that problem has orderly solution, but rather this problem has orderly actions that you can take towards a solution, and also chaotic actions that you can take towards a solution. Now, why is it the case that orderly is typically, as in like the non-artistic, right? Orderly is like the non-artistic, is the objective, right? Why is it the case that orderly is typically used in like politics? Well, when you're messing with the safety of multiple people, you want to work with as much rigidity and non-ambiguity as possible. Now, what is the artistic world? Ambiguity in and of itself. It's everything that is not. So, read you my rights. Well, your rights have been changed to everything that your rights are not. We live in a chaotic US. But it's of the self. of the self. The masculine is of the feminine is of the observer, and the masculine is of the observed world. The observed world. The masculine is mainly. It's like a mix between mainly and mostly. Mainly. The masculine mainly concerns itself with the observed world, while the feminine is concerning itself with the observer. None can exist without the other. You need the observer to observe the world. So if nothing is caring for the observer, how long can you observe the world? And if you're only focused on self-preservation and the self, then you never observe the world long enough to discover how you can get the proper food so you can continue observing, or to put yourself in a safer camp so that you can continue observing. So you can find that camp. But once you get in the camp, how do you make sure that you survive? How do you make sure that you continue to be in tip-top shape to look for the next event? How do you make sure that your vehicle is in tip-top shape? Because that vehicle is what we're using to do everything these days, right? We already know that we have this vehicle, our body, and we use it all the time, very orderly, very masculine. We think about it very masculine. We think about the world very masculinely, right? In the sense that we must conquer, we must get that. I must go there, we must attain that, I must feel that. Well, who's going to care for the machine that is doing all those things? The bionic machine that you're in. Your hardware. Who's going to care for that while you're chasing those things? While you're trying to feel these emotions. Maybe you feel those emotions better if your car was better taken care of. If your body machine, if your body was optimally taken care of, would you even want to go travel 5,000 miles away from whoever you're with if your body was all in order? As if the care for yourself was done well by the feminine. You were introduced to proper self-care ideas by the feminine. So now not only can you go and do all those great things that you want to do, but you got to make sure the vehicle is taken care of. And that's actually done in very orderly ways. But the care for it is a non-linear one, it's a chaotic one. And we need that. It takes great talent. It takes great talent to take care of the self. There's a whole world there. A whole world just as big as the outside world. The inside world is just as big as the outside world. The feminine world is just as big as the outside world. The feminine world is just as big as the masculine world. The masculine world is just as big as the inside world. The feminine world. Is there any end to the world that humans can observe? No, then that's the masculine. Is there any end to the observer? Should it continue to observe? Well, no, that's the feminine. There is no end to the inside world either. And yet both are influencing each other all the time in the outside world. I'll see you guys next time. This has been Herbie, your host Herbie with How Go On. Episode 22. We'll see you guys tomorrow on Thursday. See you guys.